It is busy as a bee here at GoLocal Prov. Welcome to GoLocal Live here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. It has been an action-packed day. Just a couple updates. If you haven't seen the video of the shooting over by the Garrahy Courthouse building, take a look at that. GoLocal's got exclusive video on that of both Providence Police, State Police, and court law enforcement looking for the perpetrator of that shooting. Also, if you haven't seen it as well, there's a news article up. Kate Niggles had some live interviews over at the announcement by Charter Care, teaming up to try and reopen the Memorial Hospital in Pawtucket. There was a press conference this morning. And then also we just were reporting up at the State House and had a full hour up there. As always on Thursdays, we hear from Ray Rickman with his big view. Take it over to Ray Rickman. Thank you.
So, since ancient times, you get ready to have a war. It's about taking ground. So one moves forward, the other one gets pushed back, whatever they do. Well, in Syria, there are 5 groups on the ground. Assad, the evil, nasty, mean, devilish, low-life dictator, controls 62 or 3% of the country. The Kurds control 10, 12% of the country. ISIS controls 5% of the country. And then the folks with us control 15% of the country. It's a mess. And Israel every once in a while does something. Supposedly they did some bombing the other day. Iraq's there. Iran's there. It's a mess. Now, I think Syria government, they dropped the chemical weapon murder objects the other day and killed children and others. Nope, I think they did it. We don't have final proof. We probably should wait a day or two and get it. I hope the government's trying to get it before it acts. I don't think we should act. The United States of America is in 80 countries with military, troops at this very moment. Syria, if we kill some Iranians or some Russians, it's going to escalate. Can I say that again? We have to worry about North Korea right now, and we have to worry about Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Do you want me to keep going? We are on the verge of destruction and war in 12 or 14 countries right now. China, our arch economic enemy, if we want to call them that, they're on the edge of war, no place. Maybe in the China Sea, maybe. That's home territory for them if they go to war. And there's no one to go to war. Australia's not going to do it. We're not going to do it. That's what China's doing. China is trying to eat our bacon and our cheese and our bread with economic and diplomatic tactics in all of Africa, in Europe now, in South America, and certainly in Asia. No bombs, no bombs, no soldiers. I was just reading that Norway, Donald Trump's favorite country it seems, Norway spends 22% of its national budget on education, and we spend 2% of our national budget on education, and more than half of that is not elementary education. It's research for major research hospitals or colleges. 1% of our budget we're spending on education. I know where we need to wage war. It's a war to improve the educational systems in this country, not to have more Americans at war in strange countries. Now here's my test. I always tell people, name me the countries that touch the country that you wish to go to war with. Name them. I'll give you one, Israel. Now you name the other ones. And when you know them and have a picture in your mind, then we can talk about war. I don't think we should do it even then. But as long as we know as little as we know, we ought to be educating ourselves.
Editorial. Welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Josh Fenton, and with me is Providence College professor Bozigian.
You can call me Kirk.
You're going to allow me to call you Kirk?
You can call me Kirk.
I
let my students do it. So.
I'm surprised you're allowing me. Very interesting story. You go from a sort of working on one of the most iconic toys in the history of the world, literally, the G.I. Joe, and now you're in Providence College land. Talk about, let's go to the beginning of G.I. Joe. You were not the original inventor, developer of it, but you were the reinventor of it. Let's go to the very beginning of it. When was G.I. Joe first created?
G.I. Joe first came in the marketplace in 1964. I remember that distinctly because 2 blocks up the road on Westminster Street, I bought my first G.I. Joe. Or I should say my mother bought me my first G.I. Joe at Woolworth's.
Woolworth's is closed.
Woolworth's is closed. Yeah, so is the G.I. Joe that I played with. It's closed as well. It was an 11.5-inch action figure. G.I. Joe lasted until about 1976 in that size. And I joined Hasbro in 1978. The company at that time was not doing so well. When I went to work there, I went as a copywriter, working in the advertising department. I wrote packages, instructions, catalogs. I did everything that you could possibly do.
Did you come up with 3 and up?
No, I inherited that.
Yeah, great. The original G.I. Joe, did yours have the furry hair?
No, mine was just the plastic.
Did it have the kung fu grip?
Nope, that came later as well.
We're
talking old Josh. We're talking the original.
I had a G.I. Joe with the kung fu grip.
Yeah.
And the greatest accessory of all time was this backpack that you could shoot a sort of hook up to pull him up, and it was yellow. It was one of the all-time greatest toys, boy toys ever. So when 76 you come, 78 you come in and you start looking at the old G.I. Joe, and you and others are brainstorming ideas. Walk us through that. How do you reinvent a toy that is now exhausted, outdated, no longer a play?
Well, that's the job of marketing,
yeah.
And that's what the whole idea behind what we were trying to do back then was take an iconic toy and reinvent it for a new generation. And that new generation had been suddenly playing with smaller action figures, 3 3/4-inch Star Wars action figures.
Oh, those Star Wars guys.
Well, they gave us inspiration,
right.
And we quickly started to plan a line based around vehicles, all kinds of vehicles that would then be supported by 3 3/4-inch action figures. The figures were actually accessories to the vehicles.
What year did the reinvention of G.I. Joe launch?
1982.
And how'd that go?
Instant success. Instant success.
And we're not talking hundreds of dollars. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking millions of dollars as a new revenue stream for Hasbro.
My boss and I had Bob Prupus, who was a friend, mentor, and at the time my boss. We projected the line would do about $15 million. Year one, it ended up doing close to $50 million.
$50 million net increase of about $35 million over projected. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
The Hassenfeld, that next generation of Hassenfeld brothers, Alan and Stephen, the late Stephen, they were pleased with your.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it was the success of G.I. Joe and the sales of G.I. Joe that allowed Hasbro to suddenly join the ranks of big toy companies once again. It allowed us to purchase Milton Bradley.
Right, game company.
It also allowed us to pony up the money needed to put out a new action figure brand, something that most people still remember today, Transformers.
Absolutely, right. And then soon thereafter, licensing and into Star Wars figurines,
Yes.
etc. And that was the bridge to be able to do that. Talk about play. You know, you're a professor at Providence College today, and you're looking at all these things from both a business standpoint, but also the cultural aspect, because they're so completely tied. You now have generations, and you've got now 2 full generations who are electronic driven, who are first and foremost on a Game Boy or on an electronic football game. They're on a computer, they're on a PS2, they're on some type of device. What's lost in that? Because the imagination was so profound when you had your little figurines and they were stacked on your bookshelf and they were attacking each other or whatever they were doing. What's lost in that for kids?
You said it, Josh. You used the word. Imagination is what's lost. With a three-dimensional figure and a vehicle, you can take your figure anywhere. I mean, that's as far as your mind can travel. When you're locked into a game and a video game, you're locked into the scenario that the writers and developers of that video game created. Kids love it, they still play with it, but you're losing a little bit of the fun and the imagination that, you know, younger generations or older generations had.
Do you see any chance that that sort of figurine-driven, hand play, simple style of toy will revert and have a renaissance? Or do you think they just get, you know, it's going to be virtual reality will be the next progression for 4-year-olds?
If I had the answer to that, I'd be inventing it with my business partners right now. I think the answer is there'll always be a place for toys.
Yeah.
It's just how do we interpret what those toys are? Do the figures incorporate the electronics that you're seeing on a computer screen or on a mobile device?
Right.
Some people are already trying that. I don't think anyone's captured it fully. I just think we'll see it evolve.
When you talk to your students at Providence College, and you're teaching undergrads.
Yes.
So they're, excuse me, 18 to 21 years of age, and you talk about this progression of a 11-inch figurine. Do they look at you with a complete?
They have no clue.
Zero.
They've never seen that kind of action figure, that size action figure, you know, unless it was tucked away in an attic and it was something that their father had.
And as they're developing business strategies and you're working with them and talking about those things, are they so trapped in the known of what they know, which is electronic gaming, you know, handheld devices, laptop at the most expansive, or can they start to think about progressing into elements? You know, we had Brown professor here who's working with Hasbro on working with the elderly for different, really, you know, almost AI-driven toys,
Right.
To be companions to older people. Do you see? Can they even adapt? Think about these other progressions of how toys can interact with their lives?
Well, you know, I don't teach them specifically toys. I teach them
Right.
marketing in general. But we do one of the exercises that I do have with them is they have to create a product, and they use the whole semester to actually develop and create their own product as a team, and then they have to market that product. And it's always interesting to see how the class divides up. You have some students who gravitate towards the electronic technology, high technology area, until I have to rein them in. And I say, look, I gave you a retail price limit of $19.99.
Yeah, right.
So you got to think a little more realistically. And then I have students. One of the topics I give them, or one of the things I give them that they can probably try and develop, is a toy for college students. And
Isn't college a toy?
well, it can be, I guess. But what we try and do is I try and get them to think about some kind of activity, game, toy they'd play with as a college student. And over the years, the last 5 or 6 years that I've been teaching at PC, students have come up with some pretty interesting ideas.
Was it any of your classes that came up with beer pong?
No, but I can tell you this. I've had students who've come up with a really radical new way of playing beer pong, and that I've told them, you know, you should be taking this to another company and seeing if you can get somebody to invest in this idea.
How far are you helping these students progress their ideas? Are they getting all the way to the thought and the development level in which they're ready to go on developing a prototype?
It depends. They have to develop a prototype for my class. So that can be, you know, anything from a cardboard model. I've actually had some students who have friends at WPI, Worcester Polytech, who have actually put together CAD programs where they print out three-dimensional plastic models. So they've gone to that extreme. But I don't require that. I just ask them to put together some type of prototype out of cardboard, foam core, anything that just three-dimensionally represents their idea. And they've come up with some pretty interesting items.
Do you get any sense of what the next big progression is? You know, you're seeing massive consolidation. Toys R Us out of business. You know, literally where most Americans have bought toys for the last 2 generations. 1,000 stores closing in a 12-month period of time. Hasbro and Mattel in some level of discussions, or certainly Wall Street has reported that they've been some level of discussion about a merger. Where is the toy industry going? And is it, as we've seen with Hasbro, really much more of an entertainment style of movies and gaming and then some third-tier toy development?
I think this is going to be a year or two of the toy industry sorting itself out. I think what I think we're going to see is a return, so to speak, to where toys were before the era of Toys R Us.
Yep.
And that means you're going to see more retailers using toys the way they were sold to us when we were kids, or certainly when I was a kid. Department stores would use toys in the fourth quarter to draw mom and dad in as loss leaders to then get them to buy other things. And so I think you're going to see a lot of retailers. The business doesn't go away.
Right.
You know, nature abhors a vacuum, and the fact that Toys R Us has gone away doesn't necessarily mean all 10 to 15% of the toy industry is going to go away, which is what Toys R Us market share was.
Best Buy just opened their first store in 7 or 10 or 11 years. It was a remarkably long period of time. Could you see Hasbro opening up some retail locations in key flagship kind of styles in New York or Chicago?
Interesting that you say that. When I was at Hasbro, one of the things we were working on was creating a whole direct marketing program that I was in charge of at the time, of selling Hasbro toys directly to consumers.
Yeah.
We backed away from that because it angered one of our bigger retailers, Toys R Us.
Right.
I think now there could be an opportunity for someone like a Hasbro, who, you know, is more of an entertainment company.
Absolutely.
Who has alliances with so many other big entertainment companies like Star Wars, like Marvel. There could be an opportunity for Hasbro to open up its own
Dave and Buster's style, virtual reality, all sorts of integration.
Exactly. But you mentioned Best Buy too, and the point I was trying to make about loss leaders, Best Buy is putting in toy departments into their stores. And I think that's what you're going to start seeing. More and more, Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble has a huge, toy department within their bookstore. And when I say huge, I mean it's like a specialty retailer.
Right.
Lots of Legos, lots of action figures, specialty collector action figures. I can see them cutting back on their CD, DVD aisles, which most people don't even buy CDs or DVDs
We got a
anymore.
CD the other day. We didn't have a computer that had a CD-ROM.
Exactly. So I can almost see them taking that footage in their stores and putting more toys in there.
One of the assignments I'd like you to do next year is a GoLocal toy line of on media.
Oh, you got it. Just give me the personalities. We'll create action figures of all of
Absolutely.
it.
Professor, thank you so much. This was great, and it's such a key part of Rhode Island's history. Hasbro is one of those long-standing, homegrown companies that has really done just remarkably well through lots of complex iterations in the industry, globalization, China, collapse of retail. It's really remarkable of the transformation of that company.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me.
We'll be right back in 1 second with our next guest. Ms. McLean, thank you for coming on to Go Local Live.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you are really one of the leading people in putting together a really forward-thinking effort to include more young women in STEM. And you're in one of those first generations of leading women who are developing strategies in industry. Talk a little bit about it.
Well, I'm a member of the Society of Women Engineers, and we're put together a local conference that will be over at the Convention Center in 2 weeks, on the 20th and 21st.
How big a conference is this?
They're expecting about 750 women engineers.
Wow, that's a big...
It's small. Our national ones are usually like 6 or 7, or I think they're up to 14,000 last time.
And what did they, and any specialty in the engineering, or is it broad-based?
It's very broad, which is
Okay.
one of the things that I really enjoy about being a member of the society, is that I get to meet women from all different disciplines in engineering and learn different things and share in that diversity. But the big thing that I've worked on with the conference is their we call it SWE Next Design Lab. It's a day-long program for middle school, 6th through 8th grade girls to come in and work with engineers and as mentors, and we also have some high school students that will be working with them.
That's great.
And they'll be doing hands-on activities and learning what engineers really do.
And, there's been so much written about the discrepancy and the bias within the educational structure of really encouraging young boys on issues of math and science and discouraging young women, girls on those same issues. Are we starting to see any improvement in the educational culture to be able to improve that? I know we have a lot of guests on, like yourself, or professionals who are working on different robotic efforts.
I think there's a lot of efforts around STEM that are really helping to bring young girls into the careers, introduce them to the careers. FIRST has really done some great things, and they do seem to actively encourage girls to join their teams. There's also, Girl Scouts is very involved with STEM, which is where I do a lot of my work.
Yep.
But with Girl Scouts and with the SWE Next program, we're trying to do activities with girls in a group of just girls.
Yeah.
When they're separated from the boys, they tend to interact with the activities and attack things in a very different way, and they get a better chance to really learn and explore and learn in their own way, and that I think really helps.
You're an engineer, and you a few years ago went into engineering. And what was your first engineering job?
I have worked my entire career at Electric Boat.
So you've been at Electric Boat, and the first day you showed up at Electric Boat, you're at Groton?
Groton, yes.
And making the world's best submarines.
Yes.
And how many women engineers were there the first day you walked in?
In my department of about 136 engineers, I was the only woman engineer.
And now today? 2? No.
I'm not really sure what the number is, but there's at least on my team of 4 people, there were 50%. And
that's not universal. But,
that's not universal.
That's a little.
It's
right.
very. It varies from area to area, but there are a lot more women there than when I first started.
And you're seeing this sort of, the Governor Raimondo in Rhode Island has been very outspoken and started a number of initiatives and, spoken here numerous times and created conferences, etc. Are we starting to see the improvement, the both in K through 12 elementary all the way through engineering colleges, like the University of Rhode Island or the engineering program at Brown?
What we've seen in the industry is that around the early 2000s is when we sort of topped out. And in the industry, it's about, from the last census, they said about 10 to 12% of working engineers were women. In 2015, in Connecticut and Rhode Island, we were somewhere around 20 to 23% of the graduates in engineering actually had or were coming out with degrees. In were women coming out with degrees, and that's better than it was maybe 10 years ago, but only a couple of percentage points. We're really only slowly creeping up.
Do you think part of it is play? We just had a toy designer, and so much of the gaming, those sort of activities that are so driven to young boys, where they're so comfortable with technology, some aspect of technology, is that part of the issue?
I think part of the issue is when girls hit that middle school age, they tend to get very self-conscious, where prior to that they're as interested and as involved in STEM as the boys. But when they get to that age, they start to get problems with their self-confidence, especially when it comes to competing or interacting with the boys.
And then for boys, they're so clueless at that age that it doesn't have any effect on them anyway, both as a father and as a coach of that age group numerous times. They don't have a clue, so you couldn't possibly affect them from the outside. Let's just wrap up with a little discussion about the conference. If you're watching and you're a mom or dad and you want to get your daughter involved, how do you do that?
You can go to the SWE website. And
we're going to have that on
up.
our site.
Okay. And if you go there, registration for the Design Lab program is open through next Friday, the 20th.
Correct.
And the program's on the 21st.
Great.
And you can also sign up there as a parent or an educator. And we'll be doing a lot of fun, hands-on activities with both groups. We'll be trying to give the parents and the educators some help in how do you encourage and help students that want to go in this
Will
direction.
you get the opportunity as a young woman to build, during the course of this, their own nuclear submarine?
Sorry.
No.
That takes a little longer than we have in an afternoon.
That little longer. So just for clarification, you will not build a nuclear submarine during the course of this program. Is there any cost to this?
It is $5 for the students, and they get a T-shirt and
$5. That's
$5,
beyond
yes.
free.
That's and it's $7 for the parent educator program.
Great. Really want to thank you for coming all the way up here, and congratulations on the great work. I do think, you look at the discrepancies between the number of engineers the United States is producing and some of our competing countries, and there's such an incredible demand to produce more engineers, to get smarter, to be able to develop more things. And in the long run, if we don't, we're going to be at a competitive disadvantage. So many smart folks are coming over to take advantage of our higher education opportunities and then returning back and producing great and brilliant things. And as we all know, this world is flat. You can play from anywhere.
Yes, and that's one of the real reasons to encourage anybody to go into engineering right now, is that there's going to be a huge shortage in the coming years, especially as the older people retire and as technology increases. We need more people to design it.
So if you're not designing AI, you may be out because of AI and robotics. So, warning, we had Daryl West on, who is at Brookings and had spent much of the last 2 years in China, and really rang the warning bell with us on live, Skyping in from DC, about what's going to transform in the next few years. I want to thank everybody. We're going to be right back in 1 minute. Welcome back, everybody, to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Josh Fenton. With me is the man who shook up Rhode Island's healthcare industry today, John Holliver from Charter Care. As I think folks know, Charter Care oversees Roger Williams Hospital and also Fatima. You're becoming a big player in the marketplace. Today, you made a major announcement. You announced that an effort to bring back Memorial Hospital, which was closed on December 31st or January 1st. Talk a little bit about the decision to move forward with that.
Sure. Josh, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's great to be here. Secondly, our opportunity to look at Memorial and to move forward really comes from a groundswell of invitations, not only from the three mayors up in that area of Rhode Island, but also from the number of patients that we see on a daily basis in our other two hospitals. It's really wonderful to be able to fulfill and fill a need as far as healthcare up in this underserved region.
So in Northern Rhode Island, I'm not sure everybody completely understood. I mean, Memorial had been struggling for years on patient count from a standpoint of folks in the bed. But I don't think people understood of what the implications were when they closed it, of what the impact was going to be on emergency rooms around the state. You know, rumors are, stories are, anecdotal as they are, is that Miriam was backed up, you know, functionally up and down the streets, and there were multiple hours. That's a very unusual situation for Miriam, and really points to the demand and need for more healthcare coverage.
You're absolutely right, and we saw that at Roger Williams as well as Our Lady of Fatima, and we saw that Miriam would be on diversion, which is not allowing emergency vehicles rescued to come into their facility, strictly because they were overwrought and overrun with
I got to
patients.
tell you, I used to be the city councilman in that area of the city back in the 90s, and I don't ever remember that ever happening in the history of Miriam. If it did, it was beyond my time period.
Well, we have to keep in mind that even right before it closed, Memorial Hospital saw an average of about 100 patients a day in their emergency room. So while the infrastructure in the rest of the hospital was not functioning to full capacity, we need to keep in mind that the emergency room and its urgent care area was still vibrant and running.
And Memorial for, you know, I don't know how long, 5-6 years was so underfunded, both when it was an independent hospital and then when you know, the other hospital group, Care New England, took it over and was bleeding out $30 million a year for 2 or 3 consecutive years. They were not pouring a lot of money into that. They were not keeping up with the needs of the infrastructure. How can you be successful when others failed so miserably? I'm going to be blunt about it.
Sure.
The numbers are pretty clear.
They are. We're very confident in the Charter Care model that we run, and we've actually proven it in this state, as we have in 5 other states. In the Charter Care model is very simple, is that we run hospitals very efficiently. We get patients in the door. My average wait time in the emergency room is about 15 minutes, and it's not due to the lack of patients because we see over 100 patients in each one of our emergency rooms on a daily basis at Our Lady of Fatima and Roger Williams. It's the different processes that we have put in place and the people that we hire to make sure that we can take care of our patients in a very expedient fashion. The second thing that we do that I think that's very unique is that I come from a hotel background. I worked for Four Seasons Hotels for 10 years, et cetera, and what we do is that we really go out of our way to give the PX, the patient experience, to all those who come through the door. And what we're seeing is that more people are voting with their feet, coming to our hospitals, and that's what we're going to try now and relocate to Memorial Hospital.
Bob Whitcomb, who was for a very long time the editorial page editor at the Providence Journal, before that was at the Wall Street Journal, is a columnist for GoLocal now. And he says, listen, the difference between for-profit hospitals and not-for-profit hospitals is one pays taxes.
He's absolutely correct.
Why do for-profit hospitals have a different reputation than not-for-profit? I mean, you've seen in Rhode Island, you saw Care New England lose $130 million in a little over 2 years. You saw Lifespan's got a little bounce back towards profitability, but had some massive losses You did not have that. You can't have that.
Right.
What's the difference?
The only difference, as you just said, is our tax status. We pay taxes, and the not-for-profits do not pay taxes. Now, I've spent my career working in both,
Right.
so I know that to be a fact. The second thing is, even not-for-profits have to make a profit
Right.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, my 94-year-old father was always questioning me, why did I work for not-for-profits and work for a losing company? And I had to explain to him over his last 40 years or so that we are not-for-profit in tax status, but we have to make bottom line dollars of profit so that we can reinvest in people, plant, technology, and just keep up with the everyday works and depreciation of the buildings and equipment.
So within about 7 seconds of you making the announcement, one of the more prominent unions sent out a statement. They're not wildly excited about it, and you've obviously had different relationships with them over time. How do you get them on board? How do you get those folks, the nurses union primarily,
Right.
Involved in this and see this as a positive rather than as a negative?
Well, I think that's, Josh, that's a great question. And what we're endeavoring to do right now is that, the union leadership, very smart gentlemen. I have a lot of respect for them, and they do good work for their members, et cetera. And I think one of the things that we've been doing, at least in the 2 years that I've been here, is we've been using outside folks to kind of adjudicate our relationship with them. And what I want to have happen now is go local.
Yeah, right.
Let's go local. So let's have, the local lawyers.
We've got a little room back there. We can work this out in an afternoon.
We can do that, but actually sit down, break bread with Jack and with Chris, meet, talk over what the issues are. I think we have common goals as far as what our nurses, the workloads that they should have, and pay schedules, and actually the future. Where do we want to go as a company? Now, if you look, there are a lot of struggling systems, healthcare systems in the state. We have come really from the ashes over the last 3 years and put us to a place where we're doing okay. We still would like better rates.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll talk about that later maybe, but at the end of the day, we're able to provide a modest increase to all of our members and to all of our employees this year. We have put $90 million back into the facilities at Our Lady of Fatima and Roger Williams, and we've actually modernized it, brought new equipment in, and been able to, again, to give these raises and market adjustments where needed.
One of the big market factors right now is with Care New England's financial instability is their negotiations with Partners Healthcare Boston. Partners is an entity, and we've written a ton about it. We actually broke the initial story about it, that has an annual budget of over $13 billion. It's about almost 50% larger than the state of Rhode Island's annual budget. They have 70-something thousand full-time employees.
Right.
This is a megalopolis. Now, right over here is the Hospital Trust Building.
Okay.
And for many years, thousands of people worked in that building, and Fleet Bank owned it, and they went out and bought other banks around the country, and more people worked there, and more people worked over there.
Right.
And it was great for the Rhode Island economy.
Sure.
You forget parking down here. You couldn't walk through the arcade at lunchtime. It was so crowded.
Okay.
And then one transaction too many, they get sold to Bank of America,
Mm-hmm.
and that building has been empty for 5 years.
Right.
I haven't seen in my adult life, next door over there is Providence Gas Building and National Grid. Once the out-of-state entity comes in, kind of lose control and the number of jobs decrease. It's a major, major concern. We've had the governor here talk about this issue. We've had Stephen Pryor talk about this at Commerce. We've had the Speaker of the House. How dangerous is Partners coming in and that consolidation for the Rhode Island economy and for jobs in Rhode Island?
Well, I think, Josh, that certainly Charter Care, we've been very clear on what our stance is. We feel much the same way you've just described this neighborhood. I come from Massachusetts. I know I've been working in hospitals that Partners has been in pursuit of.
Yeah.
So I've dealt with them from that perspective. And I can tell you now that our fear is, and we've kind of teamed up with Brown University and have the same ideas, et cetera, we feel that we are at risk of losing patients, especially those that are more complex.
Right.
Up to Boston, research, physicians, and we feel that it could have an adverse effect on the economy here. I believe that if we have the ability, and I do believe we have the ability, to sit down with Lifespan and Care New England and Charter Care, that we can figure out between the three of us how to keep healthcare local.
Yeah.
And I believe you have a tertiary hospital, you have feeder entities, you have the independents, et cetera. It can be done without the outside enormity of what Partners brings to the economy here.
Well, listen, once they come, right, what stops them from acquiring Lifespan or elsewhere? And, you know, once they're here, and I speak from the experience, and, you know, we looked at 10 or 15 other similar business acquisitions in a range of different things. How does a governor ever control them, right? If they control, you know, 3/4 of the hospital systems and healthcare system, there's really no check or balance that can be placed on them, because it's really a megalopolis, and it's happened in Massachusetts. I mean, that is now a 70,000 employee. Charlie Baker's a great governor; he's the most popular governor. But I bet when the head of Partners calls, that's one of the phone calls he takes on the quick.
I would bet on that. And the other thing is the whole market dynamic of negotiating with third-party payers, negotiating with the state on, you know, Medicare and Medicaid dollars and how you're going to split that, fee for service, at-risk capitated contracts, et cetera. All of that kind of can take second space or second fiddle if a megalith comes in like Partners, and instead of going through a negotiating process, says you are now going to pay us 15% premium for the honor of having us come into the
Now, I'll
state.
take a little bit of the devil's advocate for a second. They come in and say, listen, we're a better healthcare system, right? We're better ranked. We're with a better university. We're with Harvard Medical School, the #1 ranked medical school. And the patient who's sick says, well, I want the best, you know? My brother's gonna die. How do we have the best of both worlds? How do we balance that?
Well, I think that, you know, the structure that we have in place right now, we have everything from the independent community hospital. I have
Like a
one of
South
them,
County or a Newport.
or Our Lady of Fatima.
Yeah.
All the way up to an academic medical center, much like Roger Williams. And then we have the tertiary academic medical centers, which are the Rhode Island hospitals.
Right.
Anything that can't fit in that continuum of care would then be shipped out gladly, whether it's going to go south to Yale or north to Boston to one of the Partners or Dana-Farber. Those are the things that we could do. I do not believe, firmly do not believe, that they have to live and work here for that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the next step on, let's go back to Memorial. What's the next step on Memorial?
Well, I think the next step on Memorial, today, you know, it's like anything else. It's like,
How happy was Mayor Don Grabian of Pawtucket, who might have, you know, I think it was, what was it? Columbia football team didn't win a game for like 5 years. He's had as rough a year between Hasbro potentially leaving and the hospital closing, the GAM Theater. Was he the happiest man in America? Was this Christmas for Don Grabian?
I believe it was. He asked me if I could break out my old baseball bat from former days and go play for the local Pawtucket Red Sox. But I think he's very happy. I think that, you know, it was an easy sell today.
Yeah.
Because everyone in the room, whether fire chiefs, police chiefs, the Senate and the House of Representatives who were there, members of the House and Senate, all the way to the mayors, et cetera, everyone was happy because it was good news and is good news for the region. We were going to get pushback. We will get pushback from, you know, those who look at it as either competition, increased competition, or other points of view. That's life.
Do you need to go back and get a new certificate of need? Do you need to go back to the health department? They you know, rescinded that in the end of December, beginning of January, I forget the date.
Right.
Do you have to go through that formal process again?
Well, here's what we're hoping for. Right now, the building does not have any designation. So you're absolutely right. It's not designated as a hospital or clinic or anything like that. So really, if you want to look at it, we're buying real estate.
Yeah,
It's a
right.
real estate transaction. What we want to do is just be sure that we go through the process, whether it's, CONs or other,
Yeah.
to reinstate all that was there when Memorial closed.
Right.
So that we can provide to that community that need, the needy and underserved community, those services that they had prior to the doors being closed.
Next stop, Dr. Scott. Is that really the governor, Dr. Scott? Is that kind of the next
Everyone's
door
going
to
to
go?
Everyone's
Yeah.
going to be involved.
Great.
So you're going to have Care New England. You will have maybe Lifespan weighing in at the end of the day. You'll certainly have the community advocates. You'll have the local elected suite. You will have the statewide suite. You'll have Charter Care, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I look forward to this.
One of the biggest thinkers in healthcare is former director of health, Michael Fine. And Michael Fine says two things, and very important things that I don't think people totally think about. One is we probably have too many beds.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing he says is hospitals, especially in poorer, urban areas, are economic engines. They're incredibly important. A huge advocate of keeping Landmark going in Woonsocket. And you literally saw kind of the breath and hope and future of Pawtucket go out the door when Memorial closed it.
Right.
It's the centerpiece of the community. That seems to be a critical part of being a springboard, more so than 25 full-time employees in a baseball team, having hundreds of jobs tied to a healthcare facility.
Right, and I would agree with that. Some say that we are overbedded in Rhode Island. More and more of the procedures on a daily basis are going to an outpatient facility.
Absolutely.
Therefore, hospitals someday will become extinct, I think. But as you just said, you need to look at the demographics and the geographics of every state that you're in to say, where can the beds be taken from?
Right.
And I'm with you 100%. I believe that up in that area of Pawtucket, that Memorial Hospital serves not only to be a quick, easy, and affordable venue for them to get their health care, but also it's an economic engine to help the city of Pawtucket, Cumberland, and Central Falls.
What's the timeline? What do you think? You'll have this open, today's Thursday, Monday?
I was shooting for Tuesday afternoon, actually.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We'll be over for the ribbon cutting.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the tenacity of the local people who were in the room. If Mayor Grebian, were driving the bus, it would be Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
But like anything, we need to go through a process. And we'll get resistance as we go through that process, but we'll also get support. And at the end of the day, if we believe in what we're doing, which we absolutely do, if the patients believe, and the elected officials, as I said, then I believe it's going to happen.
Mayor Grabian would lay down in front of the governor's state police vehicle in order to get that hospital reopened. I think that's an absolute given.
He was very excited.
He was very excited.
Yes, and he's a big guy, so I kept having to move away from him. So.
Yes, right. How many times did he hug you?
Twice.
Just twice.
Twice, yeah.
Listen, I want to thank you so much. Listen, this is an ongoing discussion. This is a big discussion. Healthcare is one of the biggest parts of the Rhode Island economy. There are 70,000 people either directly or indirectly tied to the healthcare industry in Rhode Island. Two of the largest employers, Lifespan and Care New England, are paying some of the biggest. You're in the top 10, I think,
right,
of private employers. This is a big economic decision. We talk a lot about $5 million tax breaks for GE for 100 jobs. This is 100 times more important.
It is.
From a macro standpoint of where Rhode Island's future is, and building on the success of Brown Med School and the existing healthcare infrastructure that's here now.
Correct. Correct. And that's why we're excited to be here, number one. And if we have the opportunity to contribute more than we have right now, well, quite frankly, we have turned around 2 hospitals, plus a health center, plus a cancer center, plus we employ 3,000 employees right now who might not have been employed had we not come along.
Absolutely.
We want to take that same model applied to Memorial Hospital and move forward.
Great. Listen, I want to thank John Oliver for being on today. Big news coming out of Pawtucket and the potential reopening of Memorial Hospital. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Welcoming you to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 and 4 o'clock. Thanks, everybody.